color modes. So what about color modes? Color modes, we have a different color modes in Photoshop, and you have many types. Actually, we have many types of color modes, and we have many steps. And number one, we have RGB mode. RGB mode is consists of millions of colors. RGB mode consists of millions of colors, by the way. And number two, we have CMYK mode. CMYK mode is consists of four printed colors only. And number three, index mode. Index mode is consists of 256 colors. Index mode consists of 256 color. And number four, grayscale mode. Grayscale mode is consists of 256 grays color. And number five, bitmap mode. Bitmap mode is consists of two colors only. And the color mode or image mode determines how colors combine based on the number of channels in a color model. And different color modes result in different levels, by the way, of color details and file size. And for instance, use CMYK color mode for images in a full color print brochure, and use RGB color mode for images in web or email to reduce file size while maintaining color integrity. So what about RGB color mode? I would like to explain for you now RGB color mode. By the way, Photoshop RGB color mode uses the RGB model assigning an intensity value to each pixel, and in 8 bytes per channel images the intensity values range from 0 black to 255 white for each of the RGB red and green and blue components in a color image. For example, a bright red color has an R value of 246 and a G value of 20 and a B value of 50. And when the values of all three components are equal, the result is a shade of natural gray. When the values of all components are 255, the result is pure white. And when the values are 0, pure black. And by the way, RGB images use three colors only, or channels, to reproduce colors on screen. And in 8 bytes per channel images, the three channels translate to 24 and 8 bytes x3 channels bytes of color information per pixel. And with 24 byte images, the three channels can reproduce up to 16.7 million colors per pixel, by the way. And with 48 bytes, 16 bytes per channel, and 96 bytes and 32 bytes per channel images, even more colors can be reproduced per pixel, in addition to being the default mode for new Photoshop images. And the RGB model is used by computer monitors to display colors anyway. And this means that when working in color modes other than RGB, such as CMYK, Photoshop, by the way, converts the CMYK image to RGB for display on screen. Also, RGB is a standard color model, and the exact range of colors represented can vary depending on the application or display device. And the RGB color mode in Photoshop varies according to the working space setting that you specify in the color setting dialog box. And what about CMYK color mode? I would like to explain CMYK color mode. In the CMYK mode, each pixel, by the way, is assigned a percentage value for each of the processed inks, and the lights and the lightest highlight colors are assigned small percentage of processed ink colors, and the darker shadow colors higher percentages, by the way. For example, a bright red might contain 2% cyan and 93% magenta and 90% yellow and 0% black. And in CMYK images, pure white is generated when all four components have values of 0%. And use the CMYK mode when preparing an image to be printed using process colors. Converting an RGB image into CMYK creates a color separation, and if you start with an RGB image, it's best to edit first in RGB and then convert to CMYK at the end of your editing process. In RGB mode, you can use the proof setup commands to simulate the effects of a CMYK conversion without changing the actual image data. And you can also use CMYK mode to work directly with CMYK images scanned or imported from high-end systems. And also CMYK mode is a standard color model, and the exact range of colors represented can vary depending on the press and printing conditions. And the CMYK color mode in Photoshop varies according to the working space setting that you specify in the color setting dialog box, by the way. So what about lab color mode? Lab color mode. I want to explain lab color mode. The CIE lab color model. Lab is based on the human perception of color, and the numeric values in lab describe all the colors that a person with normal vision sees. And because lab describes how a color looks rather than how much of a particular colorant is needed for a device, and such as monitor or desktop printer or digital camera to produce colors. And lab is considered to be a device independent color model, by the way, and the color management systems use lab also and as a color reference to predictably transform a color from one color space to another color space. And the lab color mode has a lightness component, by the way, and that can range from 0 to 100. And in the Adobe Color Picker and Color Panel, the A component green and red axis, and the B component consists of blue and yellow axis, can range from plus 127 to minus 128. And lab images, by the way, can be saved in Photoshop and Photoshop EBS, large document format like BSP, and Photoshop PDF, Photoshop RAW and TIFF, and Photoshop DCS 1.0 or Photoshop DCS 2.0 formats. Many kind of format actually, and you can save 48 bytes and 16 bytes per channel. Anyway, and the lab images in Photoshop large document format BSP and Photoshop PDF, Photoshop RAW or TIFF formats. Note and be careful. The DCS 1.0 and DCS 2.0 formats convert the file to CMYK when opened. So what about grayscale? Grayscale mode. Grayscale mode uses different shades of gray in an image. In 8 bytes images, there can be up to 256 shades of gray. And every pixel, by the way, of a grayscale image has a brightness value ranging from 0 black to 255 white. And in 16 and 32 byte images, the number of shades in an image is much greater than in 8 bytes images. And grayscale values can also be measured as percentages of black ink coverage, like 0% is equal to white, 100% to black. And grayscale mode uses the range defined by the working space setting that you specify in the color setting dialog box. So what about bitmap mode? Bitmap mode, I would like to explain bitmap mode. Bitmap mode uses one of two color values, by the way, black and white, black or white only, to represent the pixels in an image. And images in bitmap mode are called bitmapped 1 and bit images because they have a bit depth of 1. So what about duotone? Duotone mode. Duotone mode creates monotone, duotone 2 colors, and tritone 3 colors, and quadtone 4 color, and grayscale images using 1 to 4 custom inks. So what about indexed color mode? Indexed color mode, I would like to explain indexed color mode. Indexed color mode produces 8-byte images, files with up to 256 colors, and when converting to indexed color, Photoshop, by the way, builds a color lookup table, CLUT, and which stores and indexes the colors in the image. And if a color in the original image doesn't appear in the table, the program chooses the closest one or uses desiring to simulate the color using available colors. And also, its palette of colors is limited, and indexed color can reduce file size, yet maintain the visual quality needed for multimedia presentations and web pages and the like, and limited editing is available in this mode, by the way. And for extensive editing, you should convert temporarily to RGB mode, and indexed color files can be saved in Photoshop BMP or DICOM, and digital imaging and communications in Medicine, MeBGIF or Photoshop EBS, and large document format BSP or BCX, and Photoshop PDF, and Photoshop RAW, Photoshop 2.0 or BICT or BNG, and Targa or TIFF formats. So what about multi-channel mode? Multi-channel mode images contain 256 levels of gray in each channel, by the way, and are useful for specialized printing. And the multi-channel mode images can be saved in Photoshop and large document format BSP, and Photoshop 2.0 and Photoshop RAW or Photoshop DCS 2.0 formats. These guidelines, by the way, apply when converting images to multi-channel mode. Like layers are unsupported and therefore flattened, and color channels in the original image become spot color channels in the converted image. And converting a CMYK image to multi-channel mode creates cyan or magenta and yellow and black spotted channels. And converting an RGB image to multi-channel mode creates cyan or magenta and yellow spotted channels. And deleting a channel from a RGB and CMYK or lab image automatically converts the image to multi-channel mode and flattening layers. To export a multi-channel image, save it in Photoshop DCS 2.0 format. And note here now, indexed color and 32-byte images cannot be converted to multi-channel mode.